Okay. So thank you everyone for joining this online sharing. I think it's probably the first time I talk to the students and broader audience about personal branding. I did it a few times in my own career, but I didn't really know if that's a very common thing or is that just pure luck. But I did some study with the help of AI, so this is something I want to share with you. So the title is Make Your Work Visible. This is related to the nature of financial industry because most of what you did in the firm is either confidential or not visible. So it's very different from other industries, which I will walk through later. So for myself, the first experience I have in my personal branding is actually 10 years ago. So back then I was just leaving my first employer, Credit Suisse. And I was supposed to join the China's sovereign wealth fund in Beijing. And during the garden leave, I have a 3 months sort of paid vacation. I just started to do some blogging because I thought, oh, I worked for 8 years. That's a long time. But in industry, in practice, the equity repricing trading is so different from what I learned in NYU. I thought maybe I just write it down. I started a blog and I write nothing confidential. I just wrote how the traders actually using the models to price, to manage risk, and to structure trades. It's kind of similar to like what Nassim Taleb and Peter Carr wrote in the books. But for me, it's very personal and it's more recent. And it's also like more focused on the Asian market, which I traded. And so I stopped the blog after I joined my second firm, the sovereign wealth fund in China. But 18 months later, I got a call from the largest investment bank in China. So one of their senior manager is asking me whether I would like to join them in Hong Kong to build their equity. So this is actually out of nowhere. I think the reason is he read about my blog and he also consulted other people who read my blog. I think most of the either practitioners and as well as the people outside the industry, like students and some of the clients, think very highly of what I wrote because back then it was very rare and it's very practical. So this is how I got my third job, which I had the luck to build my personal brand in public for the first time. So the door opened because for once, my thinking, my work was visible. So I think Dr. Chu will walk you through how personal branding work in academia. So basically, academia is the opposite of finance. Because from what I see is that in academia, you have the publication, citation, awards, and also the professorship, name chairs. It's all public and it's all legible. Most people can tell your credential very quickly from public domain. But in financial industry, even with like LinkedIn these days, most of your credential is still kind of vague or invisible because your P&L belongs to the firm, especially for the sell side. For buy side, unless you're a portfolio manager with certain years of track record, you don't really have anything visible in the public domain. And also you have the NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So even after you left your employer, you cannot directly talk about what you did in the firm. It's all confidential. And most of the time, the credit belongs to the team. So usually you work in a team unless you are a single PM pod. And your reputation usually lives in a few hands, your clients, your stakeholders, and your boss. And this reputation will evaporate if they move on or if they retire. So what we want to do in financial industry is we want to try to build our personal branding. But the key concept here is legibility. So you want to be known for something very specific, not very general, but a very specific. It's only for the professional domain you're working in, and by the people who matters most. Because I think if you use the link heavily, you can see some people they just add anyone they can connect, and they try to become like a super connector with 1,000 or even more connections. But the most important thing I think is you need to make yourself known to the most important people in your industry, like especially the mid-level to senior level people. Those people will definitely beat the random followers on your social network in LinkedIn. Your reputation inside the firm is rented. The public reputation is the only asset you own, and it will carry with you, and it will compound for your whole career. Of course, if you successfully become a portfolio manager in the buy side, your reputation will be directly linked to your P&L, but that's much later in your career. And the good thing is technology transition is very good for branding. The best moment to build a brand cluster around new technologies. So I list the four era here in the past 3 decades. So in the 90s, when I first started to use internet, back then, some people used a personal website. It was kind of popular. And some people, they made themselves very well known or even make a huge amount of money from selling software or sharing some information on their personal blog. That's in the 90s. And in the early 2000s, it's blogs. People use blog to write long form essays. And it's kind of become kind of popular for maybe 10 years. And from the iPhone era, the smartphone era, you have the LinkedIn, and later you have YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and also a podcast. They become more real time and more networked. And nowadays, in the past 3 years, we have AI. So with the new technology, the early movers will get outsized reach. And in the new domain, for a while, nobody is expert yet. And especially for the older generation, they are busier and they usually they have a very slow ramp for learning new things. For younger generation, you have the opportunity to become someone who really knows this new technology because this technology is so new. So why is this your edge? Because when technology changes, the leaderboard reset and the new tech will reset the hierarchy. The seniors 20 years network was built in the old paradigm. And in the new median, a young person like a student, a university student, 50 years old, 40 years old, just like me, we start far closer to even. Your experience isn't the disadvantage you think. And your native first fluency in the technology is the asset they want so badly. So you should play the intersection, your domain plus the new technology. So one of the classical example in financial industry in the past 3 decades is Michael Burry, who's known for his subprime bet. So he actually rose to fame in the subprime crisis because in the early 2000s, when he was a medical resident, he started to write his value investment analysis publicly online. And some hedge fund managers, someone called Greenblatt, and some other hedge fund tracked him down because the essays were so thoughtful and so early. I think it's helped them make a lot of money, and they wanted to seed him. That's why he can start his own hedge fund, just with almost no financial industry experience. So the lesson is, if you have visible thinking in the public, you can pull the capital in. And this is also my lesson. It's kind of similar, just 10 years later. And in the past decade, there are a lot more examples. I just listed a few here, who made from nowhere into the mainstream hedge fund industry. So the first guy is a research partner. His pseudonym is Jesse Livermore, and he is also outside finance, but he made it into mainstream hedge fund as a PM, as a partner. And the second person, I think it's very public on YouTube, laying out that she was an electrical engineer with no financial industry experience, but he successfully became a macro analyst and build her own. And third person is Bill McBride. He's now one of the most famous housing analysts. So I think with AI now, it's become common again. If you follow Twitter closely, I think in the past 2 years, there are a lot of people who have made them very famous in Twitter because the AI technology is so new. Everybody's learning. And also the unique thing about AI is it's kind of similar to internet. You can speed up your studies. So this is actually what I am doing right now. So since I think almost 2 years ago, I started to use AI to automate my research. And I also try to teach myself fundamental equity analysis because I was trained and my whole career was almost about equity trading and quant trading. So I didn't really have much experience in fundamental equity analysis. But with AI, I think it's speed up the learning curve. So with only a few months, I think now I can say I'm already comparable to the junior level fundamental equity analyst. And it is putting me in the rooms with the frontier AI researcher and some hedge fund managers who wanted to know how to use AI in financial research and investment management. So if I don't use AI, I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to sit down with them and talk to them. This is how I'm building my personal branding again with the help of AI. So 10 years later, I'm showing you the same move. We can use new technologies to build our own personal brand. So one of the GitHub project, which is cited almost every day by the financial industry, it's actually only 1 year old, and it's started by some people with no strong reputation in Wall Street. It's just maybe some outsiders who are good at tech. So they put up GitHub doing agentic trading and the research. So the demand is actually very high. Nobody knew how to use it, even until March, April this year. Most of the senior PMs are still very formal. They don't know how to use AI, but everybody's talking about AI. And this project become, I think, everyone's go-to project if they want to get their hands on agentic trading. So the supply is very scarce, but the demand is super high. So what is scarce now is someone with both financial knowledge and also some solid AI knowledge. You need to show the concrete use case, like a research agent or a data scrapper or some automatic agentic trading bots. So, but the catch is AI can easily generate a lot of slop. So the good quality actually kind of rare, and it needs a lot of human evaluation and feedback. So this is where you can create your own personal branding if you have time and if you have relevant training and experience. You can build something real and share it. So the playbook is just do your learning in public. You can document what you figure out because everyone is learning. Even if you just started, I think you're probably at the same stage as someone with much longer experience. You should choose one of the mainstream channels like YouTube, Substack, Podcast, Apple Podcast, Twitter, LinkedIn, or even GitHub. Just stay consistent. I think it doesn't matter which channel you choose, as long as you're posting something solid and relevant, you get followers, and you should own it. You should build an email list. Ideally, maybe one day if you have enough followers, you can start charge for it. And of course, if you are working for a firm, you need to know your compliance policies. Like I said, in financial industry, usually you cannot about your work at the company. You can talk something not related to your current work, but related to financial industry in general. That's where you can build your own branding out of your current firm. So here I list a plan for the first 90 days. First, you find a niche, write something relevant to both the frontier technology, which is AI, and also your industry or your major, like AI for science, AI for finance, or AI for whatever, medicine. And you need to ship it. I think with AI, it's very easy to ship the prototype. Basically, like for the agentic research or agentic trading, from my own experience, even if you have never done it before, with the current frontier technology like cloud or GPT, you can ship it within a week. And then you need to own it. Just create a dedicated page, like a podcast page or a blog or dedicated Twitter account or email list. And then you need to keep the frequency. Just keep posting at least maybe once a month, but don't overdo it because I think quality matters much more than quantity. And you need to engage. Like sometimes people will start follow you, and the famous people may look at what you output. If they think it's interesting, they will comment on it. You need to reply thoughtfully to the people you admire, and you need to start now. So with AI, like I said, learning is so fast and it's so cheap. There's no excuse not to start. So that's for me. And like I said here, this presentation is also made by AI. AI is now part of my workflow every day. If you are interested, I can show you what I did in the past 6 months. So
Thank you so much. I know I definitely have a few questions, but I think we can take a break now and see if anyone else from the audience has any questions for Mr. Luo.
I have a couple questions, if that's okay. So, to me, the nature of innovative technologies and shifting paradigms is that it's hard to determine what the infrastructure of these new technologies will end up looking like long term. So, I'm thinking like our positioning is crucial when it's still building and growing, because if we position on the wrong side, we still might lose the opportunity of building something long term and sustainable with our careers. So, I guess my question is like, how, as an early adopter, do you identify whether or not you're positioned in a space to actually build? Yeah.
Mr. Luo, are you still with us? I think he might be frozen. He's re-entering the waiting room. 1 second. You might have to re-ask him again.
sorry, I dropped. Sorry. What was the question? Maybe I missed the second half. The wrong side of
Okay.
technology. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because to me, I think like doing this is very like important, like you said. But on top of that, the added layers that we have to position, well, from what I'm thinking is that we would have to position in the right space to like position ourselves for that long-term growth and building something. So how, as an early adopter, how do you like navigate or identify if you're positioning yourself in the best way for that growth and that building?
Okay. I think if you ask me the same question 1 year ago, I would think it's kind of hard because 1 year ago, maybe only cloud or OpenAI is doing it correctly. But nowadays, I think if you talk about AI, most of the foundation models, their capabilities are kind of similar. Like the open source models from China, they're catching up very quickly. And for the frontier model in US, it doesn't matter whether you use like Codex or Cloud Code, very similar. And what you output is actually something you need to, I think it will become kind of unrelated to what model you use. So like I was building a equity Wikipedia. So this is a markdown format Wikipedia. I use cloud heavily in the past 6 months to build it. But even one day, if I got kicked out by cloud and I switched to the open source model, I can still pick up because most of the contents will be decoupled from the AI model. I don't know if that's clear to you because most of people, if they use the AI to do the coding, if you own the code, I think it just takes maybe 1 or 2 weeks to migrate to another model. You ask the model to learn your code because if you build it properly, it will be well documented and the other AI model should pick up relatively quickly. But if you didn't do it properly, if you didn't have the engineering know-how, sometimes it will become a mess and you need to restart everything. So I think nowadays, I would say it's very similar to the internet. It doesn't matter which frontier model you use, it's possible to migrate and you should accumulate your output. Like if you do coding, you have a code base. If you do the inference, like the equity analysis or quantitative trading, you will have your own knowledge accumulation. It's not that related. It can be decoupled. So I would say now it's much easier compared to 12 months ago. Much more easier.
Yeah. I guess I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I guess my question is less so about positioning through like the model usage of AI, but more so like when I think about thought leaders in industries and the ones who break through and have these like insanely successful careers beyond, I imagine the reason why is because through their branding, they have differentiated and had a way of thinking that uniquely was maybe positioned to be, one of the early adopters and also one of the like mindsets that transform the way the technology is being used. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's like hard to kind of like wrap my head around, but
okay, probably I know what you're talking about. So the regime shift in the financial industry, the AI application actually is evolving super fast. Like when I started to build my own Wikipedia 6 months ago, nobody was doing it. I think someone was doing it privately. I think 2 months ago, everyone started doing it. So your opportunity window is only like 2 or 3 months. You can become an expert. Then everyone catch up. It's very different from the internet age. The internet age, the diffusion takes years. But in AI, in the AI age, I think it takes months or sometimes weeks. So that's why I say if you have time, it's a luxury because you can just dedicate it like a few days, then you can ship something. But if say someone like me, if I'm working, I probably need a few months to catch up. And then if you have something already shipping and if you can build on top of it, iterate it. So I think be the first mover I think in AI age is much, much more important than the internet age. Yeah. And also the counter argument is with AI, it's super easy to learn. If you don't know it, just ask AI to teach you. So if you have time, I think anything within a few days.
Thank you.
I also have a quick question. You mentioned obviously like using these new technologies to build your brand. And I know often maybe it's just the circles that I'm in or like around like kids college age, when we see something that's like obviously very clearly made by AI, sometimes it doesn't feel personal and people are kind of turned off by it. And you did mention like making sure it still like reflects like it's like authentic in some way and reflecting what you're trying to say. I'm talking particularly like for posting and stuff. If you have a personal blog, do you think it's different from industry to industry, or maybe like is it a generational thing, the way like certain communities view things that are like made or completely produced by AI?
Well, I can only talk about the financial industry. I think we have similar experience because I can tell almost immediately whether this article is purely generated by AI. Because AI has certain ways of writing things. It's very obvious. But usually, like for my own usage, I would do at least 20 or 30 rounds of iteration with it.
Okay.
The output would be completely different if you just ask AI to do one round of iteration. Like I know someone used deep research from ChatGPT to generate a research report. That is slop. That's definitely AI slop. But for me, if I use like 30 or even more rounds of iteration, it will be very personalized because I'm asking the question I'm really curious about. I'm asking question like it's not in public domain. The AI cannot fetch a pre-existing article to answer my question. It has to do the inference. But AI is similar to people. It's lazy. If you ask a question, it'll grab the cheapest answer from the internet. But if you tell AI that something he doesn't have in his training data, and if give the AI the sufficient data and the logic you have in your mind, it can answer, it can do the actual inference like a human. So it takes a lot of work. Like I said, it's engineer. How you get the data, how you set up the ring fence, how you tell AI the paradigm, how you ask AI to iterate and learn. It's engineer work. It takes experience, but also you can try it out. Sometimes I think if you don't have prior knowledge, maybe it's a blast. You can find new ways to do things. So yeah, so I think it's similar. If you just use AI with very few human evaluation and human iteration, it becomes slop and it feels very in person. But if you have a heavy human evaluation and feedback, it will become very similar to what people wrote. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? Or you can also, and we'll have time at the end for more general Q&A. For now, I think we can move on to Dr. Teo's slides.
Thank you, Mr. Law. I learned a lot from you, especially how different it is in the financial industry compared to the academia, as you mentioned already. So before I start, I do want to mention that in academia, you cannot just use AI to generate a paper. People will notice it, and then it will definitely damage the reputation. So I never start with AI, like writing paper. I always start with my own writing. And then if I need, I probably will ask AI to help me with like reframing some of the sentences. And I never ask AI to do literature review because it will give you bad lists. It's always make mistakes on literature review, mostly because they do not have access to the database where you actually have to pay for. Like a lot of the publications is not publicly available. So doing a literature review is really hard for AI. So that being said, let me now start talking about personal branding. Before I share my slides, I do want to share with you the ways I usually, like whenever I have publications or new things that's going on in my research group, how I let other people know. Hold on, let me see okay, share my screen. All right, so here are the few ways that I usually tell other people publicly. For example, if there's a new publication or conference presentations or a new grant that I have received, I always tell people because I used to be very shy. I feel like if you talk too much about yourself, people might think you're arrogant. But later I figure out, I realized that definitely don't be shy in academia. You have to talk about yourself, otherwise your impact will be limited. So here are a few examples. The first one is the LinkedIn page. It's very important. It's very commonly used in academia. Whenever I have new publication, I write a post in LinkedIn. For example, here, these are my recent posts. I have a new publication, and then I also present at a conference. I tell people what I present in the conference. And then publication, I give a summary of what the publication is and also give a link to the publication. And here are just a few more example publications, conference presentation, and so on. And you can see sometimes I get really a lot of impressions. I get a lot of comments. And also people do share my posts, repost my publications. I know that even some of the financial firm, people working in the financial industry, they even share my paper because some of my paper are related to how energy transitions are impacting the housing market. So that's one channel. And then second one, I used to use Twitter a lot, but now, after a lot of politics going on, a lot of the academia are actually now migrating from Twitter to Blue Sky. But here is just an example of how I used to use Twitter to also advertise my publications. You can see I give keep a picture snapshot of the publications and talk about the main findings. I even discuss in the comments what are the implications of those findings. And the third way will be have your own website. I think Mr. Law also mentioned about this. This is where I keep my own stuff. I have complete control of my own webpage. I give a link to my CV. It's very long. And also I give a summary of what my recent research grants and awards, and also link to some of the key papers. All right. And then also, if you work in any institution, sometimes when you have achievements, they will also have news story writing about yourself, your publication. For example, just last week, there is a news story about a new grant that I have received about AI infrastructure, energy justice, looking at how data centers reshape community vulnerability to power outage and health impact. And here's also another example about a news story about a new research grant that I have received about sustainable and ethical AI infrastructure. So that's the fourth type of channel, which will be the news story from your institution's website. And then next, I use WeChat a lot to advertise my publications. I not only just do my own personal posts whenever I have publications or grants or my thoughts about some research questions, but there are also some public accounts of institutions or organizations or just, self-initiated media channels where they also talked about my research and they translate my research into Chinese. And then there are a lot of comments and reposts of those news stories as well. This is just an example. This is not me. This is my co-author about a recent paper that we published. And this is another example. It's an official account of Nanjing University. I gave a talk there last summer, and then they also do advertisement of my talk. And I can see how many people viewed this, and then they repost my talks And then they come to my talk and listen to my research projects. And then next, also, whenever I have new publications, I send it out to some of the major listserv. These are listserv where you send to one email address, but it has like thousands of people in that listserv where they work in other academic institutions in other countries. For example, this is an example that I sent about a high impact journal that I published at Nature Energy. And then after I send those emails, sometimes I also get follow-up emails asking me questions and also asking me to send them the full papers. And then also there are some other websites where you can also build your impact and a page where you can show all your publications. One example is ResearchGate, where I do receive, for example, a lot of inquiries. This is just example, a request to ask me to send me their full papers, my full papers to them. And also Google Scholar, that's where you have to have Google Scholar in order to work in academia, where it shows the publications, actually all publications since I started working in the academia dated back way to like 2009, 2012. And they also show like citations, how many citations, meaning other people, whenever they write paper, they cite your paper, it will show up here in the statistics. And here you can see I have a very good trajectory in terms of citation. This is this year's half a year that citation compared to last year. Okay, so these are the ways that I basically let people know about my work. Now let me share the slides that I make. Just to summarize what I have been thinking about personal branding in academia, I think the first and foremost is you really have to have good work. Otherwise, you cannot really showcase anything. When I first started out in academia, I was very shy in a conference and nobody really noticed me. And it was sometimes like being an introverted person like me, it's really hard to attend academic conferences because you have to break in and then talk to people who really don't know you. But if you don't have work to showcase, it's really hard to start that conversation because other people, they value their time. There's opportunity cost of time to do networking. They only want to talk to people who they think that they will like benefit from. For example, it could be well-known experts in the field. They want to talk to experts. Or they want to talk to potential collaborators or people who may be able to share resources and data. If you don't have work to showcase, then really people don't want to waste their time to talk to you. So the first fundamental thing is that you have to have work. Present your work, present really good work. Afterwards, you will notice that even if you don't like very proactively approach people during the conferences, if you really do a great presentation, there will be people who will actually come to you. So that's very natural. As long as you have good work, I think networking will become a very natural thing. And then second thing is community is really important. That's also what I realized over so many years. You have to have people that will speak about your work in front of other people. For example, whenever they talk to other people about, let's say, doing energy efficiency evaluations or looking at how like electricity pricing impact consumer behaviors, they will mention my work to those people. They say, oh, you should go look for Lucy's work. And then she recently published something that you should really go look for those work. So it's just want to emphasize that you really have to have a community that know you very well. This could be a community where you collaborate with people who you collaborate or people you like organize like conference, you organize workshop together, or it could be your mentors or mentees. But you definitely have to have some of your really good friends in academia who also do very good work. And then they will also talk about your work. And then there was a multiplier effect among the community of your work. And then third is what I already just showed you. So I think I'm a very humble person. I know what my gap is compared to like the frontier of the research. So I always seek opportunities to learn. I know that I have where I have to improve. But humility doesn't mean that you have to be too shy or invisibility. You still have to talk about your work. You need to be confident about your work. While your work is showcasing what are the implications, but in the meanwhile, you also need to know the limitations. But that doesn't mean that you cannot like talk about your work very proudly or confidently in front of other people. And also sometimes I feel like even if you like, for example, there are a lot of opportunities, like very high impact, like media interviews, or keynote speaker opportunities talk about a topic that you are not 100% expert, because there will always be new things or new development in the policy or data space. Even if you're not 100% sure, but you still need to make sure that you seek those opportunities and don't be shy and break your comfort zone. And like Mr. Luo mentioned, there's always new things that you have to learn. You just learn those things and then you talk to other people about the things that you just learned because of those opportunities. Okay, so that's the third thing. And then two more things. And then the first is that you have to be known for something. So when people talk about you, they know that you're good at like doing some type of work. For example, for Mr. Luo, people will know that he's really expert on equity derivative trading. And for me, when people talk about me, they will say I'm an energy economist working like in the electricity markets and also looking at energy transition. So you really have to build your brand and people know that what you're really good at and what you're expert in. And then second is that reputation compounds. It's not something that you just build from like just for one day. You have to like constantly show up in those conferences where like people are working in your own field, or you also like need to, like I mentioned, show you the examples. Whenever you have publications, you have to spend time to advertise your work. And also seek potential collaborations. For example, for my recent AI grants, I know that I'm not a like complete expert on AI, but I do seek opportunities to work with experts on AI or experts in engineering and computer science field so that I can break into the new field and then start my own niche about AI and energy transitions. And then afterwards, once you build those reputations over the years, there will be naturally like more opportunities will come to you. For some, there will be invitations for you to do media interviews, serving as consultants on some companies, and also do expert witness on some of the important policy issues. Okay, so just to summarize, academic branding is closer to compound interest rather than a viral growth. So hopefully I have given you some examples about where you can start and where you can build your branding. But one last thing, don't be shy. Talk about your work, right?
Thank you. I'd like to start with just an opening question for that. You mentioned obviously like at the beginning, especially you said you were relatively shy about like not necessarily bragging, but you feel like you didn't want to be too like showing off about your work and etc. How did you get more confident, like networking and like really just like talking to people and like putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I think the community part really helps. So like even my older son told me that don't brag too much about yourself. I don't know where like maybe his teacher told him about that. But once you realize that the community are really talking about their own work, then you should not feel shy because sometimes your work is even better than theirs. Then why just hide your work? And you really have to do, again, that back to the first, you have to have very good work in order to talk about the implications. You really need to believe the impact of your work, how important it is, and how well justified it is based on the data analysis.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to open it up to everyone else. Feel free to put your questions in the chat or just
I have two questions as well. So first for me, I just recently graduated from undergrad and it's been like 2 years I've been working in industry. I've not done research or entered academia. So I'm curious, like I'm doing a lot of exploration, I guess, to understand what topics most interest me. I'm curious on the topic of personal branding, how you're able to kind of like identify where your strongest like interest lies. And then from there, how do you like kind of tailor and target that to breach into the industry or academia related?
I think the first thing that is that you have to be expert on something. This is really to the one of the two final points that I make. You cannot be like a generalist. It's very hard for a person unless you're an AI to know everything. So you definitely have to be known like you're really expert on something. And then I think your question about how to find that niche, right? Which area that you're mostly interested in. And for me, I was actually trained engineer. My PhD, the main degree was civil environmental engineering in management science engineering. And then meanwhile, I also have an economics, master in economics from Stanford. The reason I did that, it was because while I was doing like a lot of engineering work, like looking at how like different type of technologies can help reduce carbon emissions or environmental impact, I realized that a lot of those technologies are not being adopted because firms really don't have incentives. They just want to like have very high profit. If there's no way for them to internalize those costs of carbon emissions and environmental pollution, there's no way that they will have incentive to adopt those technologies. And the same apply to consumers. There are a lot of obstacles. For example, the consumer could be myopic, or they have limited information, or they just have limited attention to a lot of things. So I realized there are a lot of non-technological aspects that are also very important for a low carbon transition. And that's where I feel like it's very important for me, where I have advantage of knowing all those technology aspects, but I also need to know policy and economics. That's why, so while I was doing PhD, I also learned a lot of those economics and management side of things. That eventually really made me known as the interdisciplinary scholar on energy policy and energy economics.
Okay. Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. And then you also mentioned earlier, your gap with the frontier. I guess, could you elaborate on what that means?
Right. Because for research is really like happening very fast because there are so many scientists and then so many economists. They publish like very good articles every day. And whenever they publish new things, and sometimes it's like either it's new methodology or it's new data sets or it's completely some type of new idea where you think, oh, how come I didn't think of this? So it's you learn that those new things, those are basically a research frontier. That's always all the scientists are pushing. So that's where I feel like every day I know that there are new things that's being discovered, and how do I continue to contribute to like pushing the frontier of the knowledge. So the thing is that you need to know the gap, meaning that you have to know what's going on in your field at the frontier.
And then as a follow-up question to that, I guess, you're always doing your own research too. But if people are continuously, pushing the frontier, doing more research, finding new technologies, where do you like find the balance between, oh, I need to like integrate this new thought in order to, stay at the frontier versus like, I know what like the work I'm doing is impactful and like you're kind of like pushing in your own way, I guess?
Yeah. So in order to like get grants or publish in academia, it has to be new things. And in order to publish at good journals or get really large big grants, it has to be like innovative. So if you want to make large impact, there's really no trade-off. You just have to break through or have to make new contribution. The only way to do that will be just constantly like think about research and do research and then get various type of ideas, not just from reading paper, and sometimes I get new ideas even from like daily life.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned having like an engineering background and then entering into more of a policy and like economics sector. How would you say finding that like like you mentioned, like an interdisciplinary stake between two seemingly separate fields, how would you say that has like helped you through your personal branding or through your time in academia?
That's a great question. So for energy, so this is a very niche space for energy economics. For example, if you want to look at how like electricity markets, how like different pricing structure will influence for example, the dispatch of different energy technology generation. You not only need to understand like the marginal cost of different type of energy generation, you build the marginal cost curve and look at also need to know the demand of electricity and look at the intersection. So that's Econ 101. But you also need to know how those marginal costs is being calculated. That's where you actually need to know the engineering aspects, like what type of fuel, like whether it's natural gas or it's coal or it's wind and solar. And that's where the engineering knowledge will actually come in. So I think I got lucky where I am in a field where it's really important to know both economics and also the engineering. But in some other field, for example, if you just look at like public management or public affairs, it's hard for a person with very too interdisciplinary background to do well in those fields. So really, it depends on the fields. It's not the case for every field.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
One thing I actually want to ask both of our speakers is you guys both emphasize that you really do have to be known for something. So I would like to hear both of your perspectives on how, especially for maybe people that are like a little earlier in career, how to decide what you want to do when it seems like there's so much similar to Megan's question out there, and how you guys maybe like specialized in your niche and then continue with that. Did you ever have moments where you switched it or doubted? Would just love to hear about that.
Can I start first? Yeah, for me, it's a lifelong journey to find my true passion, because I chose my first job when that was before the GFC, Great Financial Crisis. So back then, I think most of my generation, the student back then, they want to move to US, they want to go to Wall Street, because back then it was the highest paid job. And it's probably related to our own experience, because back then China was not that developed. And for me, so I was basically have a limited choice, whether I do trading or sales or research. So I did a little bit of studying in university. I thought trading is probably better because research is probably similar to the PhD work, which I don't think I'm really good at. But over the first 10 years in my career, I did have some doubt about my choice, because I think my character and also my true passion was not in Wall Street, was not in financial industry. Actually, I thought I would be better history researcher. That's my thought like in the first 10 years. But as I gradually got more connected in the financial industry, it's becoming clear that the financial industry is a very broad sector. You can be like Dr. Chu said, you can be different, but you can still be very successful. And I think my true passion was doing research, doing in-depth research, which is contrary to my thought in university. So there I found my passion. Maybe I just become very good at a niche and then doing the things I'm interested in and ignore all the noises. It's true, I think, in almost every industry, as long as you're the top performer in your niche, you can still get well rewarded. I think from my own generation, from my cohort, it's true. No matter what you chose, if you found your passion and you're the top performers, you'll be rewarded. But back to the question. So how do you find the true passion? I think nowadays you guys have more exposure. Probably you have more like internship experience. You have more like research experience at school. It should be easier compared to me. And like I said, these days with the help of AI, you can try things really fast. You can iterate things really fast. You can learn things very fast. So and also for in the early stage of career, I think you still have chance to switch your career path. So I think the classic choice was you do a few years work. If you don't like it, you go back to school. You either do a master or do an MBA. But I think in the AI age, MBA is kind of a luxury because it's kind of, I shouldn't say it's a waste of time, but sometimes you just don't learn much. It's a networking tool. The thing that you can learn is probably either at work, use AI in your spare time. So I think it just takes time. And if you find a true passion, you still have choice before 30. It's still possible. But after 30, I think in some industries, it's kind of hard. It become kind of hard. Yeah, that's my take.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I kind of shifted my field when I applied for PhD. I was admitted in the environmental engineering track, looking at like basic air pollution science, how to model the transfer of air pollutants in the air, like a lot of the air pollution transfer modeling. But then I think one thing I really like Stanford is that it was a lot of freedom for you to choose courses in different colleges. And I was lucky. I was able to choose the courses, various type of courses related to energy and environment. And then that's where I realized that there are other things that are important. It's not just technology or modeling, but also like model the economics of the market and consumer behavior. That's where after getting exposed to those different topics through courses or seminars or talking to professors, that's where I found my true interest. So I think you definitely need to explore various options, whether it's like actually going to conferences or workshops or networking opportunities or talking to people, and then find your own passion. And don't be afraid to like try different things. Because for me at that time, I thought that doing air pollution transfer modeling was my like whole career. And I was hesitant to like switch the field. But then once you try, and then you will see what you're really truly passionate about.
I actually have one more question. Sorry. So in my life, like at work right now, I am at the space where I like, maybe there's two roles that I would consider that are slightly different in function. So for example, like operations management for like data systems or whatever versus maybe like consumer insights. And for me, like it's hard I feel like I have interest in both of those, but when determining this next step of my life, which I guess how it pertains to branding and thinking about where I want to position myself and learn more to become an expert, how do you identify which one resonates more with you or has higher leverage in the future? And then how to make that decision, because I would like ideally be spending the next like year or so of my life with it.
One first natural question I would ask is like, what would be the career trajectory of these two like different roles? You can see like from the people who are already in those fields, and I look for what their options are after like they are being in those roles. Like, are there any like skills that are being trained in those positions that are actually fundamental and transferable and very easily marketable in the near future? And also, are there any skills that are just like too niche that it's hard to transfer in the future? I think that's something that you need to ask and also observe by talking to people or just from your own like gathering of information.
Thank you. We'll definitely do that.
Does anyone have any final questions? If not, I know we are a little over, so I want to thank the speakers again for their time. Thank you everyone for joining. This was really interesting. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. And this will be uploaded on the YouTube as well. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. Stay in touch.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye,
Have a good day.
everyone.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.